Ladies and gentlemen, due to budget cuts, I recently lost my job as the voice of Buddy the Talking Greeting Card. So it has come to this. It is with my deepest regrets I bring you the talk of San Diego.
Recommended by sleep disorder physicians worldwide. For a good night's sleep, day or night, it's the talk of San Diego.
Hi, I'm Andrea, and this is the Talk of San Diego. I'm here to interview Dr. Michael Hager, also known as Mick, and we are interviewing him about the 100th anniversary of the Titanic sinking. Why do you think people have such a fascination about the Titanic?
People are fascinated by the Titanic as opposed to other natural disasters, I think, because the drama played out over 2 hours. And people had the full range of human emotions. There were heroes, there were cowards, there were those in love that didn't want to part with each other. The full range of human emotions, and I think that's what people really identify with this exhibition. The artifacts, there's 200 actual artifacts from the ship itself. They were all used by people, and they all have a unique story to tell.
Tell me about the exhibition. What's it like?
Well, one of the really neat things about the exhibition is that you're given a boarding pass when you arrive at the exhibition, and it has your name, a name of an actual passenger, and it gives you a biography. It tells you where they're from, why they're traveling on the Titanic, if they're traveling with family, and it tells you what class you were in, first, second, or third class. So as you go through the exhibition, you can see first class chinaware, you can see third class potteryware, you can see first class, a wonderful first class cabin, you can see what third class cabins were like. You go all the way through the exhibit, and at the very end there's a wall that has the names of those that survived and those that perished. And at that point, you find out whether you were amongst the survivors or those that perished. In addition to that, as you kind of walk through the exhibit, the first part is about the shipbuilding, and it tells you the idea behind the ship, who the characters were that designed it, and there are artifacts of the actual ship itself. Then you go into a first-class cabin, and you see what the first-class passengers, how luxurious it was for them, and some of the first-class amenities and artifacts that came from that. Then you go to the Veranda Cafe, which is a first-class cafe.
Mm-hmm.
Then you see a third-class cabin. In the third-class cabin, men were in one third-class cabin, women were another. So even if you were traveling with a family, they often split up families. And many immigrants were coming from the New World to America, and they spoke multiple languages, so there could be 4 languages spoken in the 4 bunks in the third-class cabins. Then you get to see what the grand staircase was like, and some of the really wealthy patrons that were aboard, the founder of Macy's, and a number of other very wealthy families. Then you see the boiler room, and we've done a recreation of the boiler, and they're immense. And there were 29 of them on board the ship. They were 2 stories high, big boilers. And then we get into the section on the sinking, the number of warnings that happened, and there's an ice wall that you can touch so you can feel how cold the water was that night. There are artifacts that came from the ship's galley, and then finally, at the end, the personal belongings, where you can tell the story of an individual that was aboard the liner that fateful evening, and then whether you survived or not.
Wow.
It's a wonderful exhibition.
Are there certain artifacts that have personal information on them?
There are 200 artifacts in this exhibition, some of them from the ship, and they're general artifacts. They were things used on board the ship, like the china. There are personal items that we can't identify as to who they came from. For example, there's some wine bottles, and the corks are compressed because the ship is 10,000 feet down in the ocean, and the corks are compressing inside. There are comb sets. We don't know who those were from, but in the last gallery, you'll find personal belongings where we knew who the individuals were, and the reason we're able to find those intact is that they were encased in leather. And what happens is, at great depth, there are microbes that eat leather and even metal. I mean, the Titanic itself is being eaten alive by these microbes. But the tanning process in the leather is antibacterial, any kind of life form, so that the contents in it are preserved. So we have some suitcases that were leather suitcases.
Wow.
We have a jacket of a gentleman that was on board. We have wallets and we have money, and there's perfume bottles from a perfume salesman, and actually there's still some perfume left in the bottles, and so on.
Why is this exhibit important to this museum and even in San Diego?
This exhibition is of a great deal of interest to all people, and particularly the people of San Diego. This museum happens to have a very large exhibition hall, and it was designed that way to host major blockbuster traveling exhibitions so that the people of San Diego will be able to see these treasures right here in their own hometown. If we didn't do this exhibition, it probably wouldn't find its way to San Diego. So it's important as a member of the arts and culture community to make this opportunity available to all people. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, the income that we derive from this exhibition goes to support our basic mission, which is to educate people about the natural history, the environmental history of our region, and to inspire people a respect for the environment, both in this country and in Mexico, in Baja California. So an exhibition, a blockbuster exhibition like this, helps to support our basic mission. It gets people into the museum that might not otherwise have found their way here, and we think that they'll come back.
That's wonderful. I'm Andrea, and we're going to take a short break, and this is the Talk of San Diego.
Please pay close attention as our menu has changed. For those with negative comments about the show, please press 1. For those with positive feedback using your touchtone keypad, spell out the word centrotrifluorodiethylamide.
Hi, this is Andrea, and we are back, and I'm interviewing Dr. Michael Hager, and this is the Talk of San Diego. And how accurate was the movie?
The movie was fairly accurate. It wasn't 100%. There was a little bit of Hollywood in there. For example, the beautiful blue emerald brooch didn't exist. Everybody wants that to exist, but in fact, it doesn't exist. That was a part of the Hollywood plot. But the ship itself was fairly accurate, and the historic sequence that they filmed was fairly accurate. And all in all, I would say it gives a good impression of what was happening that night 100 years ago.
On April 15th at 2:20 a.m., the Titanic sank on her maiden voyage. What activities do you have planned for her centennial anniversary?
The first activity that we have planned is a commemoration of that fateful night and the people who lost their lives. So we're asking people to bring flowers or candles and put them at the Titanic wall, which is right outside the exhibition, and to remember those that lost their lives. Beyond that, this whole week of the Centennial Week, the admission price is $19.12 for the year 1912. We have actors and actresses who will be in the exhibition. We're open until 3 a.m. With the last ticket sold at 1 a.m. so that people that really are Titanic buffs can be in the exhibition when she sank at 2:20 in the morning. The Midway Museum has an exact replica of the telegraph machine that sent out the CQD, which was the precursor to the SOS, and they actually used both the CQD signal as well as the SOS signal, and visitors can actually do that and see the machine itself operate. They're also on shortwave radios, and they're in contact with a ship that is currently circling right above where the Titanic sank, and they'll be interviewing the crew as to what the weather is like. We're also showing in our theater, we're showing I think 5 films that will be running back-to-back films throughout that entire day. But the whole week, Centennial Week, we'll have a Titanic movie, a different Titanic movie every day. And we will have third-class bites available, third-class food available in our atrium, and a bar that serving the same kind of drinks that they would have had. The Prado restaurant is having a first-class 10-course meal with wine pairings, and they will have an actress there talking about the making of the film, and then they're going to come over to the museum and tour the exhibition. So a lot of activities planned, and some people, and I've been guilty of this myself, of from time to time slipping and calling it a celebration, but then remembering the number of people that lost their lives, and it's a commemoration. Yeah.
What types of foods are different for each class?
Well, the first class foods were like salmon mousse, and there's Mussolini something or other, I don't remember, but really fancy foods, and 10 courses of them with wine pairings with each course.
Wow.
Third class is pretty basic. It's stew with meat and potatoes and so on. But I will say this, the third class passengers were taken aback when they got on board as to how luxurious their accommodations were compared to what third class was like on other ships. Now, having said that, there were only 2 bathtubs available for 700 or 800 third class passengers. But that in those days wasn't so bad because they only bathed about once a week anyhow, and so if they timed it right, sometime in the voyage they could take a bath.
What did it cost to buy a ticket on the Titanic?
A first-class ticket on the Titanic ranged from $60,000 in American today dollars to $120,000. A lot of money. And there were very wealthy patrons that could easily pay that. The third-class tickets were about $900 in today's dollars. But keep in mind, many of these were immigrants, and many of these people carried all the belongings they had in trunks aboard the Titanic. Also remember that when the Titanic sunk, the women and children were allowed to get in the lifeboats and men weren't. And actually first class even had preference over third class, although that's probably hyped a little bit in the movie more than what actually happened. So imagine you're a woman married to the breadwinner of the family in those days, arriving in New York without your husband, who was the one who was going over to be employed, without your belongings, with all of your money and all of your possessions lost. All of those things were lost, and they arrived in New York not knowing anybody, with no money and no financial support. Now that's where the unsinkable Molly Brown comes in. She was portrayed in the movie as this brash, young, wealthy woman, and in fact she was. And she set up a fund to support these women and get them placed into homes and into work situations in the New World. So she was really one of the heroes of the Titanic event.
Wow. Wow, that's great information. We'll be back, and this is the Talk of San Diego.
For those that are waiting the delivery of your decorative The Talk of San Diego salt and pepper shaker, we are filling orders just as quickly as possible. Delivery is still guaranteed by Christmas Day. Please enjoy the music while you wait.
Due to time constraints, we move ahead in our program. We sincerely apologize to any remaining listeners. Thank you.
Hi, this is Andrea, and we're back, and this is Dr. Michael Hager, and this is the Talk of San Diego. What is the reaction of people who come and see the exhibit?
People have left the exhibition with many different reactions. Many people have come away with tears in their eyes and kind of reliving the emotional trauma that those people felt at that time. There have been some humorous things happen as well with the actors, and I want to say that it's the American Rose Theater Company that is has the actors in the exhibition. They're a local San Diego nonprofit theater company. And one day, this child asked to pose with one of the actors, and so they were posing, and the mother took out her phone to take a picture. And the actress said, "Madam, what on earth is that contraption?" And the child was confused that the actor didn't really know what a mobile phone was.
Oh.
And so it was a wonderful learning opportunity to explain to the child that there weren't mobile phones back then. And then to come up to the exhibit and see the primitive, now primitive, telegraph, which then was very advanced. So things like that. We've had people who have Titanic parties. They actually serve the first class or second or third class meal at their home, and then they come over and see the exhibition with a number of guests. We've had relatives of survivors come to the exhibition and leaving the exhibition feel closer to their family roots and understand more what their relatives went through. It's really been heartwarming to see the wide range of reaction that people have had, but definitely almost everybody is moved in some way when they come through the exhibition.
And are there certain people who come here who have specific relatives that they know of who were survivors or not?
Yes, in fact, Joe Harper from the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club told us that one of his relatives was on board, and we came back and looked up on the list, and his I think it would have been his great uncle did in fact survive.
Wow.
And so there've been a number of relatives of survivors. There is no living survivor left alive from the Titanic.
What should people take away from this exhibit?
People take away different things from the exhibition. I think I mentioned earlier, and it's worth repeating, that this whole range of human emotions was displayed that night of the Titanic, and I think people put themselves in the place of those individuals and try and figure out how they would react to circumstances. Would you? And there was no formal rule that men were not allowed to go until all the women and children had evacuated. Now the Titanic, on one side of the Titanic, they did try and enforce that. The other side, they did not. But but many men stood by and let the women and children go first. I asked myself that question: would I have done that in the face of looming disaster? There's a wonderful story of Isidore and Ida Strauss. Isidore Strauss was one of the founders of Macy's. And they were elderly, and they had been married, I think, more than 60 years.
Wow.
And Isidore actually was placed on one of the boats, and when she found out that, Ida was placed on one of the boats, and when she found out that Isidore couldn't come on board, She got off, and she said, "So we have lived together, we will die together."
Oh.
Yeah, and they perished, both of them. There was class distinction on board the ship, but it didn't matter whether you were wealthy or not. When that ship went in the water, the people died.
It didn't matter at that time.
Well, it didn't matter in the sense that all are equal when you're facing nature and in the water and freezing to death. It mattered in terms of a little bit in terms of who got loaded into the life rafts. And you'll see on the survivor board there are many more first-class survivors than there are third-class survivors. Some people learn about class distinction in ways, wealth class distinctions in ways that we don't acknowledge so much today, but were very prevalent then. Some people look at this as the Titanic hubris of the builders and the captain and some of the crew. It's kind of in-your-face nature. They challenged nature with the biggest, the fastest, the best, and they felt they were invincible. And when you try and play around with nature and you believe that you're invincible, chances are you're going to fail. And that happened in the shipwreck in the Mediterranean, where the captain was being boastful and took the ship too close to shore. Very similar to what happened that night aboard the Titanic. So people take away lots of things. I'm really amazed at the young people, though, that really know the history. We went out to Rancho Seco School in Lakeside to the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade class. And the first question that was asked of them by the person, the spokesperson for the RMS Titanic, she said, "What were the sister ships of the Titanic?" And about a dozen hands went up. And these kids knew it was the Olympic and the Britannic.
Wow.
I didn't know that. So it's really, it really touches all ages of people, and it's just a really wonderful reception and a wonderful commemoration of those people.
With all of the warnings they had, why didn't the Titanic slow down?
A lot of people don't realize how many warnings they actually had. There were something like 10 or 11 warnings of iceberg sightings. And in fact, since this exhibition has gone up, I went online to find out exactly how many boats have been struck by icebergs in that area, and there are over 600 boats that have been struck by icebergs in that area. So it's well known to be a hazardous place, and yet they not only steamed on at full speed, but they were trying to set a speed record to New York. And that is hubris. That is boastful. That is, I've built this invincible ship, and I'm going to show the world how great I really am. And that kind of attitude just sinks you every time.
Exactly.
So, unfortunately, the captain had the opportunity to say, "No, I'm the captain, I'm in charge." But the ship owners pressed him, and he gave in to that. And he knew better.
Yes.
He did know better. And there were, again, there were multiple warnings. They were just ignored.
And did the captain go down with the ship?
The captain did, in fact, go down with the ship.
Wow. Wow, that's really fascinating. And thank you so much for sharing all this information with us. How long do people have until the exhibit closes?
The exhibit itself closes on September 9th, but I'd like to mention another exhibition that opens in June, The Horse. It's an exhibition about the origin and evolution of horses, about the taming of horses, the cultivation. It's about horses used in agriculture, in war, and for sport. And that is open at the same time as Titanic. So if people come down after June, they can see Titanic and Horse at the same admission price. Titanic closes on September 9th. I wish we could keep it much longer than that. And frankly, we've had lots of people, 70,000 people to date in 2 months' time. So I would urge people to get down soon before the summer tourism crowds hit and see the exhibition. And thank you.
Thank you. So you hear that, come down quickly. And I'm Andrea, and this is the Talk of San Diego.